welcome back to another episode of The Wild Table. In this episode, we're going to be chasing some Sri Lankan Sambar Deer, which are one of the 7 deer species we have in New Zealand. And I'm wrapped. I've been waiting a while to get the chance to do this. That's only just from earlier today. Some really fresh tracks today. So we're super lucky and fortunate that we get to hunt this block because there's a really high concentration of Sambar Deer here. Now Sambar Deer are one of those, they're incredibly big and thick animals, so there's a lot of meat on them, which I really like. They can also tolerate human presence much more than other deer species, so quite often you don't have to walk as far to find them. So I'm pretty hopeful that we're going to get some meat on deck today. Sambar deer are actually quite rare in New Zealand, and so we are incredibly lucky to be here amongst good numbers of them today. The wind unfortunately isn't on our side and does a bit of a number on us, which means that even though there are deer here already, there's also deer scarpering for cover in the bush already. You can't hear it very well, but I actually managed to spook several deer, and they go off crashing through the bush with all the subtlety of a freight train. Nonetheless, the sign here is plentiful, and it really feels as though there might be a deer standing around every corner we turn. All my senses are on fire, and I am ready as can be to pull the trigger. Just choose that idea. Gotta have dropped here somewhere. Man, I took a standing shot at this deer, and for a harrowing few minutes I expect to find the worst. By which I mean nothing. Thoughts about being an idiot in a rush come to my mind, but after only a few moments we find the young hind lying in a creek. She's completely still, and relief washes away the feelings of worry. Sambar deer. It's only a wee fella, but still be some good meat on him. That animal just stood still long enough. Wasn't really going to shoot an animal quite so young, but still a yearling when nearly still be good meat, and he just stood still long enough to pull the trigger. It's always a bittersweet experience with deer. They are a majestic and beautiful creature, and I like to see them thrive and frolic just as much as I like to hunt them. This is also a very young animal and wouldn't have been my first choice. But in all reality, her meat will be the most tender and sweet meat you could possibly ask for. It's funny how you say, bugger, it's only a small deer. But when you pick it up, you're like, hey, it's only a small deer. And in saying that, like these things, even at this stage, they're already bigger than some fellows will ever get. So there'll still be a sizable amount of meat on this. And wrapped, absolutely wrapped. Okay, so it's about 8 p.m. in the evening, and as you can see, the light's starting to die, so this hunt would have been over anyway. And this was just quite simply the last animal, really the first animal that we saw that stood still. So I'm quite happy to take it home. And here's the crux about Sambar deer, right? Most people, especially here in New Zealand, think that they're rubbish for eating, and we're gonna make something delicious with this animal and make sure that we disprove that once and for all. Okay, so we brought that beautiful young Sambar hind straight home, and the good thing is because she was still so young and small, she actually fits straight into the chiller. I didn't have to do any cutting or anything, which made it a whole lot easier at 11 p.m. at night, which is what time we got home. So she's been resting overnight in the chiller, getting nice and cool and firm, and then this morning I basically quartered the animal, so I separated it into its prime cuts. And then we had a good think about what to do with it. And here's the thing. This book we've been having in our possession for a little bit now, for a couple of months, and it is one of my favorite cookbooks ever. These guys have no idea who I am, but I'd just love to give them a shout out. This is Hunter Gather Cook, and they do some beautiful recipes. We opted for carpaccio. Carpaccio is basically where you take a nice tender cut of meat, such as venison. In this case we're using backstrap. Then you give it a little bit of flavor through some kind of marinade, and then sear it for about a minute on either side on a really hot cast iron plate, and then stick it back into the fridge for about 15 minutes to chill it right down. After that, the meat gets sliced into beautifully thin slices, and obviously you can serve it with some other kind of beautiful accompaniments. Okay, so this hunk of venison backstrap I've taken previously and marinated it in garlic, a little bit of balsamic vinegar and some olive oil, and chucked a couple of bay leaves in there as well for flavor, and then I've just set it at room temperature for the last hour or so. Now I'm going to take some fresh flat leaf Italian parsley and I'm going to chop it real fine. I'm going to take some Himalayan salt and also a good teaspoon of Dijon mustard, and then we're going to marinate this piece of venison in all those herbs and spices, and then that goes straight on the hot cast iron plate. And get this place nice and hot, so you just get a little bit of smoke coming off the cast iron, and then you know it's ready to sear your red meat on there. Okay, so this venison really only wants to be on there for about a minute either side, bugger all, just enough to give it a nice sear on either side, and pretty much leaving it completely rare on the inside. Just giving it a nice little sear, a little bit of color on the outside. Obviously those the mustard and the herbs are nice and fragrant. Now we're going to pop this straight into the fridge, leave it in there for 15 minutes. Okay, so with wild food, what I try to do as much as possible is look around to see what's in season and what is local that we can serve with it. Now, how does it get any more local than our tree right here? So our figs right now are actually in season and ripe and good to go. We've been eating about 1 or so off the tree per day each, which has been awesome. Right now we got about, I don't know, 10 or so ripe on there. So we're gonna pick some figs right now, and then we're gonna take the figs and some bacon, and we're just gonna sear those on the same cast iron plate for a little bit, and basically just make it a little side serve for the carpaccio once that's ready. So first thing first is I'm going to take this bacon and chuck it on the same cast iron plate and get that nice and crispy, and then I'm going to cut up those figs and I'm going to add them straight to it. That combination of sizzling hot cast iron, figs, bacon, man, it's my personal dream. I think those flavors are on point. Now I'm going to take just a wee bit of maple syrup and add it over the top to just give it a little bit more sweetness, and then that's good to go. Okay, so here's the moment of truth. Now we have this beautiful seared piece of venison backstrap, and we're going to cut it into these really thin slices. I haven't done this before, so I'm really keen, but I do know that I really enjoy red meat, especially venison, totally rare like this, so I think I'm going to really enjoy it. Plus we've got freshly baked bread and butter, we've got the figs and the bacon, and to top it off a little bit of feta at the very end there, and we're going to just have this little like finger food feast and enjoy this all together. If this had been an older animal, the inside of this would be completely red, because obviously it's red meat. But quite interesting, on a younger animal like a young deer or even like a young cow, the meat is a much paler color. But you'd have to look quite carefully. You just have this nice little sear on the outside, and then the inside is pretty much completely rare. And this, as it is, just stunningly flavorsome. Yeah, Got the acid there from the vinegar. Got a nice herby, salty crust on it. And the meat itself just totally speaks for itself.
Muy bien.
It's bloody good, isn't it?
Oh, it's made it.
It's just like you see it.
Make it try some more.
This was, hands down, one of the nicest things that I've made in quite some time, actually. Really, really strongly recommend this dish. Yeah.
Compliments to you guys. The camera definitely won't give it justice. If I didn't know, I would say it's from bloody high caster songs. That's beautiful.
There you have it. First-hand report from Craig, the neighbour.
And I'm a Leo, so I give my honest opinion too.
If you're a hunter too, and you haven't tried this recipe before, do yourself a favor and correct that. As always, I offer a moment of gratitude to the animal, this country, and good friends who make meals like this possible in the first place. You know who you are.